This conference will now be recorded.
This is the Finance Committee of Council. It's 12/8/2020. Present committee members Schuman and Broussard. Mr. Kelly's not going to be able to make it this evening. Council members Glassburn, Heeman, Williamson, Limpert. The mayor is here. Director Garreau, Director Lieber, Director Kopfer. Keith Sperling is here, and our municipal advisor, Matt Stasinski. Did I miss anybody? And guests. Okay, first we're going to deal with the bond issues. I am not going to read them all, so I'll let Chuck do that at our meeting. Where are you going, Carrie? Carrie's left us. I was just going to ask her to take over. There you are. What?
She's throwing you a bone, Paul.
Okay. Director Kopfer. Do you want to go over these? We can just, I know some of them are from last year and some of them are from 2 years ago. So
correct.
You can go ahead and run down the list if you want. This is ordinance 2020-129 through ordinance 2020-142. You got the floor.
Okay, and did council get the PDFs that I sent this afternoon or later this afternoon? The first one is a summary of the capital borrowing, and that's where you can see a little bit where this is our standard practice of we go out for notes for a few years and then we consolidate them, bond them out, and set the payment terms. And these are the projects from 18, 19, 20, and then the two new projects are the Brook Park Road and the annual street improvement program. And these are all going to be going out to bonds. The 18 and 19 projects come due in April, and the new money comes due, the 2020 comes due in March. So we're going to go out in February to tie into the March maturity date of the notes. And I wanted to introduce, there's a lot of reasons why we want to go out for bonds right now. I know we talked that, possibly the rates were going to stay low for a couple years, but some of that's changed a little bit in the last few months. So we've decided to move forward with the bond issue. And I'd like, I know many of you introduced Matt Stasinski. He's our municipal advisor. And I'd like him to talk a little bit about the market, and so you can understand why we definitely want to go out to bonds and get an advantage of these low interest rates. Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, Director Kopfer. So good evening, all. Nice to join you again. Thanks for inviting me to join. So as Director Kopfer mentioned, the strategy, again, consistent with past practice, roll notes, consolidate these notes once you have a critical mass that makes sense, and convert those 1 year notes. Keep in mind those notes are generally speaking for 1 year, and you renew them on an annual basis. Each time you renew them, you renew the interest rate as well. So you do have some interest rate risk whenever you renew these notes, and that would be the case on a go-forward basis. However, we have a situation now where you've been rolling these notes since 2018. The marketplace is very attractive, and that from a tax-exempt standpoint, we are within 15 basis points of a historic all-time low. The all-time low was in August of this year. We are approaching that again. There has been a tremendous interest in tax-exempt bonds throughout the course of this year. As a matter of fact, tax-exempt and taxable issuance throughout the course of 2020 is at a record volume, near record volume. However, we expect that to fall off as there were a tremendous amount of municipal bonds in the marketplace prior to the November election. So what we have is a good confluence of circumstances, and that being, generally speaking, interest rates are low at the beginning of the year, January and February and March. A lot of that has to do with the fact that municipal investors, especially in Ohio, their bonds are redeemed on December 1st for most municipalities and school districts. So there are a lot of people who are having their bonds redeemed on December 1st and looking to reinvest those proceeds over the course of the next couple months, 3 months. And there's a lot of other municipal bonds that come due on January 1st. So those folks will have cash ready to reinvest in municipal bonds again in the first 3 months of the year. Generally speaking, volume is low in the first couple months of the year. So we're not only do we have a confluence of low interest rates currently, we expect that to continue into the first part of next year. We have we'll call it a tremendous amount of interest in municipal tax exempt bonds. We have redemptions coming up. So we have a lot of good circumstances that surround and make some sense as to why we would proceed with the bond issue. The bond issue structure is currently at 10 years, and that's because the useful life of the projects that are intended to be financed, as shown in Director Kopfer's spreadsheet on the screen, all have a useful life under 10 years. And the Ohio Revised Code says we can't finance beyond the amortization, beyond the useful life that's been identified for those projects. So it's a 10-year bond issue. The 10-year bond issue has an average life of roughly 6 years, and the preliminary interest rate, based upon today's market, of where that bond issue would be priced for 10 years, I'm going to repeat that, is 1.35%. It's talking about a 10-year borrowing for 1.35%. That's very attractive. If the city were to consider rolling the notes again, the interest rate would be lower, no doubt. It might likely be in the neighborhood of 40 basis points or 0.4%. But then you have interest rate risk for the next number of years. And again, these bonds, these useful life go out at least 10, no more than 10 years, but certainly a material amount of it, of the size of this issue, does go out for 10 years. So it seems to make a lot of sense to proceed with the bond issue. It's been, again, the strategy for the city, and it's the marketplace seems to be consistent with continuing that, with allowing you to continue that strategy. And with that, I'll stop. See if there's any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I did want to add that some of these do actually have, like the HVAC system and the ice rink and stuff does have some, like it's probably 15 years, but I'm conservative in the sense that I like to keep the debt shorter. And so I kept what most of the streets were all 10. So that is why the average repayment, I think was it 6 years, the life of the bond?
6 years.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
So
Carrie, could you explain that? So you're saying that the note we have now is 15 years?
no, the note is just a 1-year note, but you
Right.
can't borrow for more than what the estimated useful life is of
Okay.
an asset. And then the whole bond issue, and I've been pretty aggressive with making it 10 years rather than 15, because I don't like to take debt out that long. So that the average useful life with some of the IT stuff and the equipment is less than, it's like 3 and 4 years. So the average useful life of the entire bond issue is 6 years, about 6 years.
Okay. So is this, these notes, the bond will be, it'll be based on 10 years. And when you say the usual time period of these is about 6 years, does that mean we'll be paying it off early, or are we going to be expecting to go out and refinance these in 6 years? Could you explain that?
Go ahead, man.
Matt?
Can I help with that? Sure. So
Please.
if you think about the list that Director Kopfer has shown, what we're doing is we're consolidating all these various purposes that have been identified, and we're combining them into one bond issue.
Right.
And when they're combined, what the 6-year average life is intended to suggest is that the combination of all these various pieces, parts with their various useful lives, the average life of those in total is 6 years.
Oh,
So though
okay.
you have some that are 3 and 4, you have some that are 10, but the average of all of them in aggregate is 6 years. But
I
the
understand.
financing, okay, thank you.
No, that's good. Thank you very much. Okay, let's ask committee. Mr. Broussard, you got any questions? No? Okay. Anybody from council? Mr. Glassburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I apologize if I missed. What will be the new debt service amount that we're taking out? And these are all coming from the same funding, or they're in the 2 different buckets because they're coming from 2 different revenue sources? Or repayment sources, I should say.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Carrie. Go ahead.
if you look at the column for repayment sources, some of it is the permanent improvement fund for the streets. Some of it is the general fund, property tax or other revenues. The EMS fund for the fire truck, the tower truck. The Springvale as user fees, and Country Club is TIF fund. So there's a wide variety of where that debt service is coming from.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Limpert.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're confirmed, or this is basically setting that we're not going to leverage TIF for Brook Park then, right? We're not going to leverage TIF funds for Brook Park.
Actually, the Brook Park money I need to pay this year, and I'm paying it out of, because we had to go in February. It was, I did not, and if you read the Brook Park legislation, it says that we did not borrow that note that we had approved, and I'm advancing funds with the intent for the borrowing to pay it back. But I'm only having the $1 million from the permanent improvement fund to pay back, to get the note off of, and the 400,000 that is for the TIF funds. I'm not going to borrow for that as well. I'm just going to pay it out of the TIF fund balance. So I'm not going to borrow for it in March or February and repay that fund, because I think the fund is capable of handling that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming, Matt. Is that
My pleasure.
we keeping Matt around for anything else, Carrie?
We'll keep him around, but maybe not for this meeting.
Thank you, Matt. We appreciate it.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you all.
Since there are no more, you got a question, Mary Ellen? Or are you just waving goodbye?
He's waving
Okay.
goodbye to her
Okay.
friend.
So,
Waving goodbye, because I actually know Matt outside of this.
Mr. Chair,
hi.
I don't
Go ahead.
want you to do any suspension or anything. Remember that these are all borrowed
Right.
money, and so we have to do 3 readings and
Okay.
30 days. Actually, we don't for the Brook Park and the other one, but because it's new money, but we have plenty of time for all of it. So
Okay.
go
Well,
for
we're
it.
gonna do them. We'll do them as right as we can. Mr. Garreau? Director Garreau?
You know what? It
You
looks
there?
like he was there, but it looks
Yeah.
oh, there.
Yeah.
Michael, would it be
Uh,
inappropriate for us to move this forward as one vote, or do I have to do these, a vote on each one of these?
Can you hear me? Are
I
you
can
guys
hear
able to? Because I'm getting mixed signals from my computer. Yeah, you can. If there's no objection from a member, you could proceed as one one vote. You should identify the specific ordinances to recommend approval. You can combine them in one single vote. Obviously, that's, when you do it on the floor of council, it's differently, but
Right.
you should identify the specific ordinance numbers in the motion. If any one member wants to request that those be split, you could split that. They would have to be split.
Are you saying committee member or council member?
Yeah, committee member. If you want to recommend approval, yeah, you can include those specific numbers in it. But if one member wants to split it, split it.
Okay. Mr. Broussard, do you have a problem with that?
None whatsoever, Paul.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move that we recommend to full council 2020 129, 130, 131, 132, 133, 134, 135, 136, 137, 138, 139, 140, 141, and 142, and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
2-0. Thank you very much. That's good.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. I'll leave at this point. Thank you.
Okay, so next we will be discussing, let's do the temporary budget 2021-28. We have yet to move this out of committee. This is 128 is an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2021, and declaring an emergency. You had some amendments that you wanted to add, Carrie? Your sound is off.
Well, I do have a couple of amendments, but they're not ready in like approval form. And it goes on second reading next week on Tuesday.
Okay.
So, but I can tell you what they are so that you have an idea of what I'm looking at. But I don't know if you guys want to discuss and see what else you might want to do in the budget over and above the things that are like more corrections.
Okay. Well, so were there any questions that came your way that need to be answered yet? The last few days?
I sent some. We had a question about the recycling portion of our Republic, and that they don't split it out anymore. They probably haven't for a couple of times. That's what happens when you've been around long enough that the years start blending together a little. The other is Councilman Limpert, and I know others discussed the separation pay that it was important to them to fund, which I agree with. And while there are things that are in here that are, this is a temporary budget as far as once we find out the unencumbered balances, then we can look at what we want to do with those resources if we get to that point. And it could be the other way. So it has over time sometimes been a little off here or there, but I do have two items in the general fund that Mr. Garreau opted for $7,500 out of his outside services, and the fire chief had contacted me, and there was $33,000 in his outside services or computer repairs and maintenance. I'll find out exactly, but it was for TAC, something for the tones, but they actually did that this year. So that was put in there in error by them, and so we don't need that. So I have $40,500 that I could move to put toward the 27th pay fund for the general fund portion. And then the rec center, Springvale, and sewer revenue, they make up the rest of the 76,000, and they have funds available in their funds that could contribute their portion. So I can do 55,700 toward that, and then once we balance and close and all that, I'm sure I'll find it somewhere to make the 76,000 total. And I also plan on, the mayor and I are concerned about the separation pay with a lot of retirements, so we're going to look at that as well.
Okay. So any questions or comments from committee? Council? Mr. Glassman?
Sorry, I'm still learning my new camera. The separation pay, when I was looking at it, looks like in previous years we had funded on the order of 345,000 or so. Is that in the ballpark of what we would be looking at?
We would probably be looking in that amount, yes. But there are an exceptional number of retirements this year, I would say. So, but we've been building toward that. We knew they were coming. So I think we can handle it. But yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
If I may continue, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Chris.
So in the 2020 changes, I saw the bulk of the money was Brook Park Road, and but there was some six-figure numbers for refunds and reimbursements. Is that just because we accounted for that late, or do we need to more aggressively look at setting aside money for refunds for 21?
Where are you looking at that right this second? I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong book. That's why. You're looking in the transfer ordinance, right?
Yeah. So like miscellaneous refunds, there was 200,000. It says engineering, but there was also others for Springvale. I want to say there was some rec center.
Right. Well, rec center and Springvale did have a lot because they were refunding programs that didn't happen and things like that. And it's not normal, but I do believe that they did budget some for this year, more than what they normally pay. The 200,000 though is these are refunds of deposits in the trust and agency fund, and there's some projects that'll be paying out of that, and I wanted to make sure that that we had to pay some of those deposits back, and if we had to pay them before the end of the year, I wanted the monies available. So that's
Okay.
just in and out.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll step aside if for the moment for questions for the director, but I have questions as to how the chair wants to move forward when that's appropriate.
Go ahead. What do you got? Just
Roughly speaking, there were 20 to 25 or so topics we talked about, where somebody at least said something. So I would imagine there may be some ideas of amendments. How would you like for that to proceed, Mr. Chair, in terms of offering amendments or considering amendments?
Well, I mean, I'd like to get this moved out of committee so that we have to do 2 more readings on this. And we're actually doing a special council meeting so we can get it done before the end of the year. So I would imagine if you want to offer them now, but I'd like to see stuff in writing if it's anything substantial. Certainly like give the director a chance to run the numbers on it if there's something substantial. But I don't think there'd be anything inappropriate about us going ahead and if we move this out of committee and then we can talk about it before our council meeting next week, because next week we'll be dealing with amendments from the director. Is that correct, Carrie?
Yeah. And there are a couple of more amendments that I noticed that need to get fixed too, errors, so.
So, so we could go ahead, if we move it out of committee right now, we could do it without any amendments, right? This is based on what we had before us as of Saturday. And then if you want to offer an amendment to be discussed Tuesday before caucus, we could do that. And then the sooner you get it out to us, the better, I would imagine, so we could all eyeball it. No surprises.
I'm not seeking a surprise. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, no, that's right. That would be the right approach, I would think, to do it that way. So,
Okay.
does the committee have an issue with voting on this today?
I do not.
Okay, the committee of one. Okay, so yeah, let's do that. Does anybody on council have an objection to us moving this forward? And then entertaining amendments, we could have I could call another meeting before the caucus next week. Anybody have a problem with that? Do you have a problem with it, Gary?
Well, yeah, I like everything tied up neat and in a bow before next week, so that's my problem. But there are a couple other things that I do want to tell you about, so there aren't any surprises on Tuesday either. So, because I'd like to prepare the amendments so it's as amended, because if you get it as amended on Tuesday and read it that way, then I think that then you can go on to the 22nd for third reading. Correct. Correct, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, that sounds right to me. Yeah.
All right, so the one thing I noticed is that there's no hospitalization or workers' comp in the ordinance. There's no expenditures in there. There are going to be expenditures there, so I have to amend those. I have them ready to go. I mean, it's an estimate. And the other thing that is I mentioned to you earlier was the part-time and seasonal for wastewater. I did not include those in the budget. They were on a separate sheet on the other side, and it didn't get entered. So we're gonna make sure that that gets entered so that they can utilize their part-time and seasonal help. And then I do also want to put in, now that we've talked about the bond issue, I want to put in the projected proceeds of the bond issue, and then all the debt getting paid off, the notes getting paid off, so that we can make sure that everything is flush and in balance there. So that's what I want to do before next week. But it's the proceeds are paying off the debt, or for the two instances of the project, it's the two new project funds that are funds for those two new projects. So that's all it is.
Any amendment that would come from an individual council person would have to also be balanced, correct? So any additional spending would have to be, there'd have to be a cut somewhere else, correct? I mean,
it would, and also I am responsible for estimating the resources, so it would have to come from another cut somewhere else, because I'm not sure about the resources because it's a budget and what we're dealing with, but those are the resources that I'm planning on starting the year with.
okay, I just want everybody to understand, what is expected of them if they're going to offer amendments. And the sooner you get these out, the better, because I'm sure we all want to see anything. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we recommend.
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Mr. Glassman had his hand up.
I
And then
apologize. So did Ms. Heeman. You want to go first, Mary Ellen?
Thank you, Mr. Schuman. So how long do you expect the next, if you're going to move this out of committee now, how long do you expect your next committee meeting will be? Because I think that there's a fair number of things that likely will want to be addressed. I know that I had a few things, Mr. Limpert had some things, you know, we all had a couple different things. So categorizing those as, let's just say, minimum 10, you know, maximum 40, how long do you think that, before we go to a meeting, how long would that committee meeting be? What time would you start that meeting?
I mean, I can call a meeting for a half an hour. If we run long, we run long. And all these things
Well,
should be,
but if the
Let's-
director has to balance our, but if she has to go back and balance our suggestions, for example, or things that we would like to see change, then how's that going to happen in 30 minutes?
Well,
I just want to make sure that you have enough time.
well,
I think
so-
people were supposed to have questions to
Those
us.
are all my questions.
Carrie, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Mr. Chair, weren't we going to have questions or like issues if people had questions to get them to us so that we could work through them? So,
That's what I would hope so. You want to, when would you like these by? So that you can work on this? You want them in your hand by Thursday morning or something?
yeah, that would be fine.
I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to ask of council.
And
Yeah, well,
Mr. Chair,
when do we?
Go
Can I
ahead.
continue?
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you. So we'll do that. I mean, we'll of course meet with whatever, you know, date the director of finance would like, but she's, you know, suggesting that we're going to get them back like Tuesday, which is, you know, before the meeting again. So I don't think that's a big enough timeline for some of the things that might need to be addressed. So
Well,
that's all I'm suggesting. I think this is an unusual budget. You might get a little bit more discussion than you previously have.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Carrie.
I would recommend keeping it in committee and having another committee meeting rather than putting it before all
All
of
right.
council.
That's fine. That's fine. We can do that. We'll
and-
call a committee meeting for 7 o'clock.
Maybe even earlier, or,
Sure.
and
That's fine. That's fine. But in the meantime, any potential amendments should be in Carrie's hand, say by Thursday morning. I think that would give her a chance to go over them. And, all right, is that good? Carrie?
yes, it's fine for me. Mr. Glassburn has his hand up.
All right, I'm gonna, go ahead, Mr. Glassburn, I'm sorry.
I apologize. I just wanted to clarify one thing that I thought might be helpful in terms of balancing. There is the budget stabilization fund, which has not been touched in the proposal. I'm not encouraging us necessarily to do that, but to what extent does the director consider it a valid use? Is there some reserve minimum in that balance that if it's not there, we don't, we can't function because we don't have reserves? Or
The mayor and I actually did discuss using it, and it's $1 million. It is. It's so it is substantial for but $1 million can go, you know, in 1.5 pays. So that's where it kind of gets to be. You want to keep it for when it's pouring, and it's not pouring yet. And that's why, you know, we created a lot of these separation pay funds and 27th pay and budget stabilization, and we built up our workers' comp and our healthcare funds so that if we get into a situation, we have the flexibility to maybe not fund what our funding plan is in the short term, but we make it up in the long term, and it keeps us on more solid footing long term. So I wouldn't recommend using it, but I mean, I would say it would have to be something pretty dire, and I would rather keep that for the 100-year storm.
Well, Mr. Chair, the reason I bring it up is just so that if we decide, this is just my suggestion, but if we decide to any amount to go into that we decide, during that conversation what that amount is, and not just be, for lack of a better term, lazy and just say everything will come out of the budget stabilization fund. That if you're looking to add something, that you offer at least an option as what's going to be cut to pay for it. Does that make sense?
I would totally agree with that. Absolutely. If you're going to offer to spend any more money, you got to say where it's going to come from. That'd be the best. That'd be the best way to handle it. Just like any budget of your house.
Right, and I feel like the separation pay and the 27th pay and like those are reserve funds too, just like the budget stabilization. So I wouldn't recommend saying, oh, you know what, we're going to take $300,000 out of the budget stabilization fund to put in the separation pay fund. I mean, it's kind of like taking it from your left hand to your right hand. If we need it, we can surely do that. If 20 people decide to retire and we only have money for 15, then we do it. But I think that I'd like to keep that it's not a lot of money. It goes pretty quick, but I'd like to keep that there just in case things get worse, because I hear it's going to be a dark winter.
And cold, dark and cold. Okay. If there isn't any more comments, I'm just going to go ahead and make a motion that we keep, what are we talking about here? 2021-28 in committee and ask for a second. We hold it in committee and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Broussard. So 2-0 to hold in committee. And I'll be happy to have a meeting early on Tuesday. Not a problem. Okay. Let's go to 2021-27, which is, and then this is, of course, the newest, the most amended copy, I hope. An ordinance to make and transfer appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the city of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency as amended. Now, do I need to amend this in committee, Carrie? I do?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to go through this real quick with the amendments included, and then?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Garreau.
You're just going to make if the amendments are agreed upon in committee, it's a motion to recommend approval with amendments, and then you do the motion. You actually do the amendments on the floor.
Okay. All right.
That's okay. Just clarifying.
That's good. Good. Okay, Carrie, whenever you're ready.
All right. Yeah, I'm looking for my copy of the amended version. There you go. All these things start looking alike too, Okay. So if we go through, a lot of them are just adjusting for move to benefits that increase the hospitalization. We just have people who change their healthcare plan during the year, and those costs adjust. This was based on the beginning of the year, and we've adjusted a couple times actually. We have unemployment expense in the division of building that is not COVID related. So we need to make sure we have monies in there for the rest of the year for that. We have in the Department of Planning and Development, we have a pocket park expenses for the grant for $10,000. And then let's see, in the police division, we are putting money in for officer training and pension expense. And we're taking it from benefits and, or rather materials and supplies. And let's see, fleet maintenance, there's a small adjustment to move to capital outlay for the equipment that they purchased. It was, I think there was shipping costs or something to it. It was some minor adjustment. And Parks and Rec, they're adjusting for refunds and moving the monies to contractual services for the gymnastics expense. This was the first year they had the new contract, and I don't know that it was budgeted exactly properly by them. And then all the other issues happened too. So we're just trying to make final adjustments to make sure their budget is the way it should be. The street maintenance fund and the 282 fund, there's 70,110 for rejuvenation expense. And that is for the 2020 rejuvenation project. It was encumbered, it was not encumbered, and they, I'm trying to think, Keith, what was this one? Why didn't we have the rejuvenation in the budget?
I believe there was a change from the original amount that we thought the rejuvenation was for, and we never actually changed the budget for what it ended up being at the end.
That's right, because they had decided they wanted to do more rejuvenation because there were several streets that were really good candidates for it this year. And we had the funds in total, but we needed it in the contractual services. So they did do that. I remember that. And then the permanent improvements is the Brook Park Road, the resurfacing portion, and the amount that then the other things that we would have to pay. And then the next one is the TIF, the 416,438, which is the street, the infrastructure to improve and enhance the street and curb appeal and the lighting and all the other stuff that's involved in the 116,000. And then the capital.
Carrie,
Yeah.
what is the $1 million in the permanent improvement? What is that for?
That's the Brook Park Road. Remember, we have to pay it this year.
Oh, okay, and then okay.
And
Got
we didn't budget for it. We talked about it, but it was not put in this is the
Got it.
budget where we decided to do that. And then the 102 is the walking path project. That is the amount that we're getting from the CDBG funds.
Yeah.
And so this is the project costs associated with it. And then the local coronavirus relief fund. We're moving monies back and forth, trying to make sure that all our line items have the monies that we need. And then last Friday, we get a letter or an email from the county saying that, oh, guess what? We're giving you more money. So they gave us $2,413.34. They gave it to all the cities because they probably couldn't spend it all. And so we needed to add the funds available. We're buying more PPE, which we were going to do anyway, out of the general fund. So this will save $2,400 that we don't have to spend out of the general fund. And then the capital improvement, there's a $3,000 contractual services fee. The money was in capital outlay, but we needed to put it in contractual services. It's for when we did the grant through the state for IT infrastructure, Tri-C was the administrator and they charged us a $3,000 fee. And then capital outlay is $75,000. It's the remaining amount for Pocket Park expenses that's grant funded, and also sonic wall appliances. That's some of the computer equipment that we intended, that we borrowed for. So this is just appropriating it to expend it. And then $20,000 in Springvale for refunds. And then the last, I think we talked about it briefly in the trust and agency fund, we have some big projects finishing up, and I wanted to make sure that we had funds available to reimburse their deposits.
Okay. Any questions from committee? Any questions from council? Okay, well, good. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion, excuse me, that we recommend and you asked for a suspension on this too, correct?
Yes, we'd like to get it posted in the budget.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion that we recommend 2020-127 as amended and with suspension, and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye for me, 2-0. Okay, we got an easy one here now. If I can find it. Okay, this is, am I still on? Okay. This is a 2020-143 is a resolution authorizing and affirming the mayor's acceptance of cash donations offered by several donors in amounts over $1,000 to be used by the Oxcart Pantry and declaring an emergency. And administration is asking for suspension here. Did you want to talk about this, Kim?
Yes, it came to my attention during the discussion regarding donations to the city that the Oxcart Pantry does accept financial donations on a regular basis. So I consulted with our law director, and he advised that certainly those cash donations would trigger the requirement for council acceptance of anything over $1,000. I had Chris Legra go back into 2020 and pull out any amounts that were over that $1,000 mark, and there were 4, and those were included in the legislation. So, you know, we're eager to use those funds. Honestly, some of them that were donated earlier in the year may have been used, but the more recent donations for the holiday season. So that's the reason for the suspension. And we'll keep an eye on these amounts going forward and make sure that they come to council as they go. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thanks.
And you want to suspend this so we can move this out?
Please.
You can suspend. Okay. Mary Ellen?
Quick question. So Kim, these are individual donations in excess of $1,000?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anybody else? All right, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we recommend 2020-143. You have something else, Mary Ellen?
Yeah, because I want to make sure I asked my question correctly. So what I'm asking is individual donations, not accumulated together, but that one person gave like $2,000. And so that's the donation you're reporting.
One person or one entity, yes.
Thank you. Sorry. I thought maybe I didn't ask correctly.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that committee recommends 2020-143 with suspension, and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 2-0. Okay. It's 7:50, and that concludes my meeting.